The sound of screeching tires cut through the quiet afternoon like a scream. And everything that happened afterward felt like it unfolded in slow motion. A black luxury sports car spun sideways on the wet pavement, the world reflecting upside down in its polished surface, before it slammed into the man crossing the employee parking lot of the Crestview corporate tower. His lunch bag flew in one direction, his worn briefcase in another, and his body dropped to the pavement with a thud that silenced everything. The millionaire's daughter, Amelia Crestview, sat frozen behind the wheel, her hands trembling uncontrollably, disbelief widening her eyes as she stared at the man she had just hit. And when he lifted his head, dazed and bleeding from the forehead, she never expected the face she recognized from the building's humble staff directory. Nathan Hale, the single father everyone said was too hardworking, too gentle, too kind for the world he lived in. She had never once spoken to him. But in the coming days, the future of her family's $120 million corporate contract would rest entirely in his hands. Asterisk if you believe in kindness, growth, and second chances. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to your support truly helps these meaningful stories reach more hearts. Asterisk Nathan lay on the pavement for several seconds, blinking against the blurry haze clouding his vision. At 37 years old, his life had become a balancing act he barely managed to hold together, working double shifts, taking online classes at night, caring for his 8-year-old daughter Lily, and trying to send money back to his aging mother 2 cities away. Every moment of every day mattered to him. Every minute was scheduled. Every breath felt like a responsibility. And now, lying there with his breath knocked out of his chest and pain radiating through his ribs, he could think only one panicked thought: who would pick up Lily from school? But before he could even form the words, the millionaire's daughter flung open her car door and rushed to him, horrified, panicking, stammering apologies he couldn't process through the ringing in his ears. Asterisk the ambulance came quickly, but the moments before it arrived were a blur of cold rain, trembling voices, and the unmistakable realization that his life, the life he fought every day to hold steady, had just cracked open. At the hospital, X-rays revealed bruised ribs, a sprained ankle, and a deep cut above his eyebrow that required 7 stitches. The doctor gently told him he would need rest, several days off work, and limited mobility. To most people, that would mean relief. To Nathan, it meant disaster. His contract job with Crestview Corporation paid only by the hour. No hours meant no pay, and no pay meant rent trouble, grocery trouble, everything trouble. Asterisk while he tried to steady his emotions. Amelia Crestview hovered in the hallway outside the curtain, clutching her designer bag like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She hadn't meant to hit him. She had been arguing with her boyfriend through the car's speaker system, had taken her eyes off the road for a split second, and the wet pavement did the rest. She hated herself for the mistake, not just because of guilt, but because of the sickening realization that her careless moment could destroy a man's life. And though she apologized, though she insisted on covering all hospital costs, though she offered rides and help, Nathan only nodded politely, thanked her, and quietly insisted he would manage. But he wasn't managing. By the second day, he walked with a limp so pronounced it made people wince. By the third, he was forcing himself to pick up Lily from school, even though every step felt like it might undo him. By the fourth, he returned to work early, hobbling into the building long before he was ready, because he simply couldn't afford not to. That morning, Amelia spotted him struggling up the staircase, obviously avoiding the crowded elevator so no one would bump into his rib. And something inside her shifted painfully. She had grown up surrounded by privilege so thick she barely noticed it. But watching him wince with each step, knowing she had put that pain there, it hollowed her. She tried to help discreetly. She sent prepaid meal deliveries to his home, kept them anonymous, pretending they were from the building's employee wellness program. She had her assistant arrange for his daughter to receive tutoring vouchers. She even pulled strings at Crestview Corporation, quietly requesting management to shift Nathan to lighter duties. But when the executives consulted him about the change, he politely declined, insisting he didn't want special treatment, especially if it came from pity. Yet the universe didn't care about pride or dignity. It kept crushing him. A week later, he received an eviction notice, a legal result of an overdue balance, worsened by the days he'd missed. And when he thought things couldn't get worse, his car refused to start, leaving him stranded with Lily under the dripping shelter of a gas station canopy. The world felt cruel, relentless, and exhausting. And still, he told his daughter everything would be okay, even when he doubted every word. Amelia, meanwhile, felt something she had never felt before: helplessness. For the first time in her life, she couldn't throw money at a problem without making it worse. She didn't know how to ease Nathan's suffering without humiliating him. And the guilt gnawed at her day and night. Then everything collided in a single moment that changed both their lives. 2 months before the accident, Crestview Corporation had bid for a massive $120 million expansion contract with one of the country's most influential philanthropic investment groups, an organization that had recently partnered with a board of external ethical advisors. Unbeknownst to Amelia, one of those advisors, reviewing corporate culture and employee treatment, was Nathan himself. He had been quietly recruited for the board's real-world insight program after submitting a thoughtful online essay months earlier, long before he ever knew Crestview would be involved. He had told no one about the position because he always feared being overshadowed or discredited due to his blue-collar job. The role was confidential, meant only for review until the board made the final decision. He never expected to hold such power, but now, sitting in his small living room with overdue bills scattered around him and Lily sleeping peacefully on the couch, he saw clearly how Crestview executives viewed workers like him: disposable, invisible, replaceable. They never once asked if he needed accommodations after the accident. They never checked if his workload was manageable or if he was recovering. Instead, they quietly reassigned his responsibilities. During the days he was absent and nearly cut his hours after hearing a rumor he might not be physically reliable, as he read the treatment reports sent to the advisory board, scripted by Crestview managers with no mention of the injured worker in their building, he felt something inside him fracture. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. He understood now that if companies like this continued expanding, more people like him would end up broken and ignored. And his responsibility on the board was to choose integrity, not comfort, so Nathan did the unthinkable. He formally recommended that Crestview Corporation's bid be rejected. A recommendation that carried weight enough to dissolve a deal that had looked almost guaranteed. Within 48 hours, the board officially declined Crestview's proposal. The $120 million contract evaporated. The news spread like wildfire through the executive suites. People panicked. Investors raged. The Crestview name trembled. Asterisk and Amelia. She learned the truth in the most unexpected way. Asterisk, late one afternoon, she found Nathan sitting alone on a bench outside the building, watching Lily chase pigeons along the walkway. He looked tired, worn down, and yet strangely lighter. She approached him cautiously, uncertain whether she even had a right to speak to him after everything her family's company had overlooked. Asterisk, as she stood near him, she pieced together the truth from what she had overheard in the hallways about an anonymous advisor, about the rejection, about the worker who had been hit on company grounds. When she realized it had been him, everything inside her twisted sharply. She expected him to feel triumphant, vindictive, or bitter. Asterisk, but he simply sat there, quiet, thoughtful, steady. Asterisk, and that's when she understood it wasn't revenge. It was a man standing up for people who had no voice, even when his own life was falling apart. Asterisk, the moment shattered her illusions. She saw her family's empire not through her father's speeches or the company's public image, but through the eyes of a man who had been crushed by their blind spots. She felt ashamed, but also unexpectedly inspired by his strength, his integrity, and the quiet bravery of someone who had every reason to give up and still chose to fight for what was right. Asterisk. Something changed in her heart that day. Asterisk, over the next several weeks, she began using her influence differently. She pushed the corporation to overhaul its employee care policies, created scholarship programs for staff children, established emergency financial assistance funds, and spearheaded reforms to ensure no other worker ever felt abandoned the way Nathan had. She volunteered at shelters, visited staff floors she had never set foot on before, and listened to stories she once would have walked past without noticing. Asterisk, and through it all, she kept finding herself crossing paths with Nathan and Lily, sometimes by chance, sometimes because she found reasons to be wherever they were. He noticed, but he didn't question it. He simply let life unfold. Asterisk, something gentle grew between them, a mutual respect, a growing tenderness, a shared understanding that sometimes lives collide not by accident, but by purpose disguised as chaos. Asterisk, if this story has touched your heart in any way, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Your support truly helps keep these emotional stories alive. Asterisk, before the ending, here's a special request. Please comment below what part of this story hit you the hardest. Asterisk, in the months that followed, Nathan found his life slowly rebuilding piece by piece. A non-profit organization he'd previously volunteered for offered him a stable job with benefits. Lily received a scholarship from a newly founded Crestview Employee Support Fund, a fund Amelia had created in quiet dedication to people like them. And Amelia, she found herself returning to that bench often, sitting with Nathan as Lily played, each passing day softening something inside her. She understood humility, empathy, and genuine human connection in ways she never had before. Asterisk, and though the world had once brought them together through pain and collision, it kept them together through healing and something deeper, something neither of them had expected. Asterisk, sometimes the universe wrecks your plans so it can reveal a better path. And sometimes, one accident, one difficult choice, one act of integrity can change not just a life, but a future for both the one who is hurt and the one who realizes they must do better. Asterisk, and in the end, Nathan and Amelia learned a truth that would stay with them forever. Sometimes the most unexpected collisions are the ones that open the door to redemption, change, and the quiet beginning of something beautiful.